There is a lot of information being shared digitally regarding the Vermont trip. It is important that you're using those documents, especially things like the packing list or the list of expectations, as you're getting yourself ready. Yet it's easy to lose touch with the big ideas and to forget about some of the major highlights. And so I want to draw attention to those in this presentation. I also want to explain a few items that you can read about in more detail on your own. Most importantly, I want all of us to recognize that the Vermont trip is a privilege and an intense excursion, and so we need to live up to that. That means in our behavior and in our follow through with responsibilities. You'll hear me talk about three big points over and over. First, know and follow the plan. That means read the itinerary first. It means check in with your friends and the chaperones. It means follow the instructions on the remind. We'll do a lot for you to make sure you know what's coming next and that you're prepared, but we need the participants to follow through with that. Number two, make safe choices. Ultimately, it is your decisions that will most protect you or doom you. We want you to make smart choices so that you can be safe. And throughout all of this, recognize that your choices and behavior are what will control your experience, either having a positive or negative. They will affect all of our experiences because if we need to wait for you or if we have to deal with a problem at the hotel, then that's going to negatively affect all of us. And they're going to impact future students and maybe you in the future on the trip as well, because if there are issues and the school won't support it anymore, we can't take the trip. And so please think before you act and act carefully. There will be several chaperones on the trip. We have 4 teachers, 2 from the middle school, 2 from the high school. This one should actually be we'll say Miss Carcuff from the middle school, and then Mrs. Heller, who recently married and is now Carcuff as well. And so we have those 4 staff members who will be the kind of primary point of contact throughout the trip. We will take care of organization, reminders, problem solving, attendance, room checks, making sure that meals are handled. There's a lot that we will do. What we can't promise to do is provide direct supervision while the students are at the resorts. The Vermont slopes are huge. There are many of them. Some of the resorts span multiple mountains. Students will be on their own for significant amounts of time. And so while they are there, it is on them to be responsible, and if there is an issue, to reach out to us. It's really important to understand that, there's this line between what we are in charge of and what the students must be in charge of themselves. There will also be some volunteer chaperones. They are CVSD alumni who are traveling with us. They're board approved volunteers who have gone through the state clearance process. We reached out to them for 2 big reasons. First, since we're not partnering with another school district anymore, having more people on the bus helps to manage the cost of the trip. The students really, really liked having our own bus. The other group we used to partner with no longer has Epic passes, and so that would have caused an issue. And this is one of the things we did to mitigate that. We're also really hopeful that they will be positive resources too. All of them have been on the trip before, some of them several times. They should be able to give advice, support, help people get things where they need to be. While they're not going to be in charge or giving orders, they will be help and a person that the other participants can turn to. Our itinerary is still a little bit up in the air, especially around this departure time, but the basics of it are on screen. We're following a very, very similar structure as we did last year. The goal being to kind of ease ourselves into this, knowing that we don't have Mr. Bowman anymore, who used to be our big coordinator. At some point in the morning, and I might even ask for people's feedback about if this is easier before school or after a block or two, we'll meet and drop off stuff and then pack and depart. There will be a lunch stop at some point on the road. Dinner could be either on the road or at the hotel, depending upon our arrival time. Saturday will then be one of our major ski days. Breakfast is early so that we can depart and be at the resort right before open so that we're there and ready to go when the lifts start running. The goal is to make the absolute maximum of the time that we have available to us. This 4 p.m. is basically close, and so that's when the lifts stop running. People would then finish up their runs, get back to the bus, get themselves packed up, and we depart for the hotel. You can see that the hotel's about an hour away, depending on traffic. We'll then have a group dinner that's paid for in the cost of the trip and some time to recover that night at the hotel. Sunday essentially follows the exact same plan as Saturday, except we'll be going to Stowe instead of Smugs. Monday, we wake up. Students might need to get up a little bit earlier on Monday because you're not just packing for the trip to the resort, but you're loading all of your belongings on the bus since we'll be leaving straight from the hotel. And again, we'll try to depart at 7:30 so that we're ready to be at Stowe at open. We'll plan to ski there until about 2. That's a great day, even though students are exhausted. Because it's a Monday, there are far fewer people there on the mountain. And it's an awesome time to get some skiing there in. Even though that's a shorter day, there will be very little wait times, less traffic on the slopes. It will be great. We want to make the most of it. And then as we pack up and leave, we'll depart for home. This is another great example of where be very mindful of your clock. That midnight arrival is late, but again, to make the most of this trip, we want to make sure we're able to get some hours in there in Vermont on Monday morning. I'll send a much more detailed itinerary after I meet with our tour operator in the next day or two to finalize some of those departure times. As far as our expectations on the mountains themselves, remember that Vermont is a big change. These slopes are more challenging, they are far longer, and they are less familiar to you. And so as a result, you really need to be smart and then be safe. Our biggest advice over here is this general idea of starting very cautiously and then gradually working your way up. And we'll come back to that in a moment. One of the expectations, the rules that you must follow is that all students must be in a group of at least 3 people when they're at the resorts. That's important so that in the case of an emergency, if there's nobody else around, if your phones aren't working, that if a person is injured, one person can stay with them and provide help. The other one can go and get real help. And that way no one is being left alone. Larger groups are good, and so if you can travel with others, please do so. Remember to read and follow all of their signs. They will tell you when certain slopes or areas are closed or the edges of resorts. Be very cautious in the trails, especially in between the glade trails, in between the groomed trails. Those are some of the most high-risk areas. Another big point to remember is that you should know your limits. Recognize that some of these trails are different from here. In your head, you should be bumping their classifications up by 1. If it's rated as a blue in Vermont, you should be thinking about it like a local black. If it's a black, then it's more like a double black for us. And so don't jump too quickly into too challenging a slope. Not only are they more challenging, they're also longer. And so I think some of us are used to powering down these very short runs. You won't be able to do that in Vermont. I'll say that one of the times I think students get in the most trouble is when you're skiing with your friends and maybe you're not as strong a skier as them and you go with a group on a slope just because they are and you don't know what else to do. If it feels like your group is getting to stuff that's too hard for you, let me know. I will find some other groups that you can ski with. Don't let peer pressure be the reason that you get on a slope that's above your ability and then you get injured, because that's not going to be good for you or your friends or anybody else. There are lots of very positive people on this trip. There are lots of different groups who will be skiing in locations. We'll help you find people you can ski with. Don't make a mistake just because of peer pressure. At the hotel, there is a swimming pool, so you can bring your suit, your flip-flops. There's an exercise room, but we realize that it's only for those 18 and older. The hotel is probably the area where I most worry about behavior and not just about safety. This is where all 33 of us will be together in the same spot. And when you get students in large numbers, that's when our behavior can kind of spiral and be a problem for those around us. And so please follow these rules, stay on the hotel property, be mindful of your volume, use your manners with staff and guests. We will be doing room checks. That will be at maybe midnight on Friday, depending on our arrival time, 11 p.m. if we're there early enough. After that, you have to contact one of us if you need to leave the room for some kind of emergency. Part of that is to keep everybody safe. Part of that is we need you to sleep, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. And so we will be very intentional about behavior at the hotel. As far as meals, all 3 breakfasts at the hotel are included. Dinner on Saturday and Sunday night are included. We're looking to maybe make some arrangements for some group types of food on the drive up for lunch and maybe even for dinner. The hope is that takes one less responsibility off the kids, and as a group, maybe we can find some things or do some things with better pricing. As far as what's not included, and this is where it's important you have money to cover these, the 3 lunches at the resorts, remember that those can be expensive. You are allowed to pack. Some people just pack some lighter snacks and really have heavy breakfasts and dinners. I think that's a smart move on Saturday and Sunday. The travel lunch and dinner on Friday at the moment, the travel lunch and dinner on Monday. And technically that 3 lunches counts this travel lunch there. So, be mindful of that as we go through. As far as schoolwork, I really want everyone to recognize when we share with other schools that we travel up to Vermont this weekend and that students get 2 days absences that count as a field trip and not even excused absences. That's something that almost no other school district can believe. This is a great privilege that the school is willing to work with us on this. That allows us to go on a weekend that's not a holiday weekend, which makes the price far more reasonable. It also means that it's less crowded at the mountain. This is something we want to show that we deserve and we continue to deserve into the future so that future you and future participants get to do this. One of the ways to do that is to make sure that we're staying on top of our schoolwork. My advice, about 1 week ahead, and I'll send a reminder to the kids' emails accounts, mention to your teachers at the beginning or end of class or during a moment of downtime that you'll be out for 2 days coming up. But a lot of teachers, that's not the best thing for you to just tell them because they forget later and they don't have everything ready that far ahead of time. So my best advice then is to follow up. We'll probably say like Monday, maybe Tuesday of the week we leave, email them so that they have it in their inbox and they can spend a little bit of their time to get it ready for you. Once they do, complete what you can in advance or download some things to your iPad so that it's saved on there. Remember that the bus has Wi-Fi, but it's not reliable. As we go through a lot of the areas on the way up to Vermont, if the bus isn't getting service to its satellite, then the Wi-Fi is not going to be able to push out. Some people tell themselves that they'll do their work in the hotel at night. Trust me, you won't. Right? You're spending time with your friends, you're exhausted, you're tired of sitting down, you're not going to get much done. Even on Monday, the drive home, you're going to be exhausted and hopefully sleeping some. Be as much careful as you can to do it in advance or Friday on the bus. The second half of earning this is make sure that you're going to school on Tuesday. It's enough that the school is giving us 2 days off. People can't take a third just because they're tired. You know that this is going to be a long weekend. You know that ahead of time. Rest up. Get rest when you can during the trip. We're committing you to this, and then you just have to power through Tuesday, even though it's a really late night. I think another reason that a lot of students in the past have skipped Tuesday is because they've had trouble getting their absence work done and they're nervous about coming back to school without that work being finished. Even if you weren't able to get your work done because of technical issues or whatever, you need to go to school anyway. As a teacher, I'll tell you, all right, am I going to be a little frustrated that you didn't get stuff done while you were skiing? Sure, but I'll understand it. If you add on top of that you're now missing another day, that's way, way worse. If you show up and say you're not quite ready, but you'll get it done in the next night, people will move past it, and that's way better than missing another school day. Please make sure that you've signed up for the Remind. That's the easiest way to communicate throughout the whole trip. We'll push out updates as we kind of, what each next deadline, each next place to be and where and with what. That's the easiest way for you to make sure that you don't show up late to anything or that you don't forget your stuff. It's also nice for family members to follow along with that so they have a sense of what's going on. The Remind lets you message us privately through a safer platform too. But Mrs. Heller and I have shared our cell phone numbers. I think you should put those into your student phones so that you have them in the case of an emergency. If something happens and you tell the staff at the resort that you're with New Oxford or Conewago Valley, they have our information and they can contact us too. As far as packing, again, we'll send a very detailed packing list and where to include, where to put things. Follow that really carefully. Don't wait until the last night. This is the trip. You don't want to forget anything. First off, it's colder up there. Second, we're really far away. We can't get it back. And third, stuff at the resort's going to be much, much more expensive if you have to buy things. Remember that it's Vermont, so we're way north. It is going to be colder. The mountains are high, so at the summits at the top, it's very cold. You want to have solid gear. That includes helmet, goggles, face masks, beanie caps, gloves, socks, strong base layers. You really should try and plan to have all skin covered at some points depending on how cold it is. It's best to have maybe 2 sets of a lot of those base layers. You can wear one on Saturday and the second on Sunday. While you're wearing that second one, you can let the first one dry and then repeat it on Monday. That way you don't have to pack 3 full things if you're trying to save space. Think of this a lot like sort of an airplane trip. You will definitely have room for your big gear bag in the base of the bus, for a suitcase or like a big duffel, and then you'll have room for like a boot bag. In the bus, you'll have room for like a backpack and some small things to carry on, but not huge stuff there. And you shouldn't be bringing like 2 suitcases. As far as money, a lot of the transactions are credit card now, and so make sure that you have some type of card. That might be like a prepaid credit card or a Visa gift card, or even a parent's credit card if the family is trusting of that. But you want to have that with you, and definitely your Epic Pass. You'll need money for all 4 of the lunches, depending on how we arrange it. 2 of the dinners while we're traveling, any snacks or souvenirs. Remember that at some of the stops, things are a little more expensive, so plan on like $20 per meal rather than $15. As far as like big extra money for major purchases, I can help with those, and then we can deal with it when we return. But if you have a card for some of that, that would be positive. What you shouldn't bring is a ton of cash. Maybe bring a little bit to tip the people who work at the hotel to clean the rooms. Maybe bring a little bit if you're going to use it at some of the travel stops to buy a meal. But a credit card can be canceled. Cash is not going to be rediscovered. And so don't bring a lot. There's a lot to manage already on this trip. The packing list will help you remember other items. Definitely something to do to entertain yourself. Books, downloaded movies, a Switch platform, something for the bus. It's a long ride. A portable charger is a great idea, especially when you're on the mountain and it's cold. Just be careful not to lose them or mix them up with other students. And then don't forget clothes to wear while we're at the hotel as well. Please remember that this is a school trip, and so all types of substances that are against school code are also against our trip. No alcohol, no drugs, no tobacco, no vaping materials of any kind. Disciplinary action will be taken. If we need to, we'll contact a parent and maybe even require them to come pick you up 13 hours away. We don't want to have anybody in that position. Not only is that going against the school rules that we have to follow, but that's the type of thing that is a huge safety problem because our choices will be affected, and those choices are what keep us safe. We will do a basic luggage screening before we load up the gear on the buses. We did that last year. Students are present. We're not out to get anyone. We just want everyone to be safe, and we're going to be careful about that. And again, just kind of returning to our overall theme, you've invested a lot in this. Your families have invested money, maybe you have. We're giving up 2 days of school, which is a big commitment. This is a big chance for a lot of people to go beyond Liberty, and it's maybe their only chance to go beyond our local resorts. And so we want to allow everyone to make the most of it by having smart choices, following instructions, and being respectful. These points on the right, these are just part of like learning to be mature and managing yourselves here. Sleep at night. Yes, it's fun to hang out with your friends, but you need your energy to be on the mountain, and that's the focus, and this is the one time you get to do that. These runs are long, the cold is taxing, you need sleep, and you need to eat. You can pack some snacks, take full advantages of breakfasts. Some of the kids, I think, sleep in way too late, and then they rush breakfast or skip it entirely. Don't do that. Those are the meals where you've already paid for them. Take advantage. Be on time. Not only does that lose you time, but if you're late, we're waiting. Everyone is waiting. And so even if you're 5 minutes late, that's 30 people who have all had to wait 5 minutes. You've cost us as a group almost 3 hours. And finally, look out for each other. If you notice people who don't have someone to ski with, invite them. If you notice that somebody's forgotten something, remind them. Help everybody know what's coming up next. Say positive things. The part of the fun point of this experience is doing it with 30 other Conewago Valley people. Not just your family, not just a sibling, but with a whole group of kids who hopefully will help you have a great time. Thanks if you made it all the way through the video. Hopefully the slides help, the documents will help. If you have really specific questions, please email those to me and I will do my best to respond here as we get closer and closer to this trip.